Hey, everybody, welcome back to the ChatGTM podcast. We're calling this Pickup Game Edition, coming to you live here from Tampa and Boston, Massachusetts, with my co-host and partner in crime, Mr. Chad Horn. Chad, how you doing today?
I'm good. Not only is it a Friday, I had such a good time at Mertech a few weeks ago. I am glad to be extending the Mertech experience to this call today.
And that's exactly why we're calling it the Pickup Game. So when we were at Mertech, we had the pleasure of working with the Mertech team to highlight and celebrate some of the fantastic startups that were showing or showcasing at Mertech. And victim of our own success, if you want to call it that, or we just got really busy, but we weren't able to get to everybody. And part of our commitment to the show was to take good care of all the people that were taking the time to invest in that event, and also do what we love, what we love most, which is going to market. And so today we have with us, we're joined by Bala, the founder and CEO of Bytes, a platform rethinking how restaurants and hospitality brands connect with their customers in a mobile-first world. Bala is building at the intersection of technology, loyalty, and real-world operations, helping operators turn everyday transactions into long-term customer relationships. We get into what most restaurants still get wrong about digital, why owning the customer matters more than ever, and how Bytes is approaching growth in a space dominated by third-party platforms. Bala, did I just get that wrong, or did I give you a good read-in?
No, that was a great read. And of course, the next 20 minutes, we are going to dive in deeper, but that was a fantastic intro.
There we go. We're going to dive. So first off, Bala, the most important question. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Had a great time in Mertech last week. So got a little sick because the kids are in the spring break pollen season. And then excited to be back today with the two people that I love talking to and continuing the conversation from Mertech.
Well, fantastic. I love it. Love it. Chad, you want to lead us in?
I do. Okay, so people need to hear very specifically from you, Bala, what you do. But I'm going to preface it with this. One of the things you do is you're giving consumers, guests, a new way to order from restaurants. And there's a massive graveyard filled with startups that try to do that, introduce a new way for guests to order from restaurants. So as
That's
you
more
tell us,
grim than you usually come in, Chad. That is pretty grim.
I gave warning. So as you introduce your company and the problem you're solving, take us into why Bytes is different and is going to overcome this hurdle that has been a challenge for so many.
Fantastic. Well, again, we are starting off on a high note. So thanks, Chad. And I don't expect anything less from this team. So first of all, again, thanks. So I would love to start with the problem, right? Again, been in the restaurant industry for a little over 2 years now, but was in the technology space for the last 15. I was part of marketplaces like Instacart and LinkedIn and lately Amazon. So a thing or two about marketplaces. In fact, on the other side, I was on the third-party marketplace side with Instacart. The problem that we are solving is extremely simple. Today, I believe, and most of the restaurants believe, the online ordering is broken. Especially post the pandemic, restaurants are giving 30% of their sales or even sometimes more as commissions. Consumers like us are actually paying $18 on delivery apps for like a $13, $14 burger. And more importantly, the restaurants don't know who their guests are. Ultimately, we believe that the third-party marketplace, while it had its growth in the last decade or so, is getting to a point where all of the leverage and the value is accruing to the middlemen and not to the most important people in the ecosystem, that is the restaurants. So that's the problem. Now, the debate that has been in the industry since the last 4 or 5 years, I'm sure you guys were proponents of that, is third-party versus first-party, right? It's like, hey, how do we make sure that this balance is done correctly? And I think what I've realized as a product person is that it's actually not third party versus first party. It's how do you get the best of both in a world where you reimagine this context of online ordering. That's what Bytes is. We believe that the consumers need the selection, the convenience of a third party ecosystem. It's like you're going to a mall, right? Like most of the time you want your shopping of the clothes, shopping of your favorite shoes, all these in one place. So there is a convenience of going to a mall that cannot be addressed by any of these first party ecosystems separately. At the same time, the restaurants love first party because, as you can imagine, they have the most control, the most margins, and most transparency with that. So the real problem is not which one do you choose. The consumers have already chosen. And that's why 90 or probably north of 85% of the commerce is happening only on third party marketplaces. And there are n number of companies that are trying to build a pretty website and a pretty app. And frankly, I don't think that's the way to go. So Bytes is a decentralized marketplace that brings the best of first party and third party together. where consumers actually get the selection and the convenience, and they only pay in store prices. There's no price markups. And every order that is going through the marketplace is a first party order, which means that restaurants actually don't have to pay any commissions, and they know their guest data, which is they know Chad comes to their famous burger shop and eats like 4 times in a week. I hope Chad doesn't do that,
A
but
day.
let's say a day.
In my dreams.
And then finally, because the system is set up in such a way where we are AI native, the orders come from anywhere. The orders can come from ChatGPT. The orders can come from Bytes app. We also have a storefront that we license to the POS companies. But in a nutshell, Bytes is the best of third party and first party put together. Happy to go into the details on how we can do this, but this is exactly the problem that we are solving for the industry, so that the next decade of online ordering is different than the last decade, where the value accrues to the restaurants and not to the middlemen.
So there's a lot to unpack in there. I mean, when you say there's no fees in the middle, I mean, so that there's a cost layer I'm very curious about. Tell me a little bit of, or tell us a little bit about how it all comes together. When you looked at the schema of how most companies create these systems and orchestrate this to produce, what'd you look at that and go, no, we're not going to do that. Here's how we're going to deliver these with no increased costs in the middle. Where are like the key points that we'd see something that contrasts, compares to what's out there today?
Fantastic. So let's go one level deeper, right? And I think the best way to explain it is like start with an order. So let's take an example of maybe 2 burgers you're ordering in a burger joint, right? Let's say the cost of burger is like $15 when you walk into a restaurant.
Yep.
So 2 burgers, $30. The same cost if you're trying to get delivery of this is
45.
anywhere between 45 is less probably, maybe with a subscription. But if
Yeah.
you just unpack it for a second, right? Usually there is a 25 to 30% markup because restaurants can't afford to give everything from their pocket. So your $15 burger suddenly becomes $18. So instead of a 15 plus 15, 30, your food total itself is now 36. So you've already lost $6 right there. On top of it, there is a delivery fee. On top of it, there is a service fee. And of course, there is a tip that goes to the driver. Net, you're looking anywhere between, as you said, like 45, 46 to anywhere between like 50, 51, depending on how much you tip. Now, contrast this with you actually going to the burger joint's website, or you're calling them on the phone and then getting the same service. Of course, that is not a great experience. I'll come back to how we stitch it, but just unpacking the cost, right? First, your $15 burger stays $15 because you're directly ordering with the restaurant. So instead of 36 on the delivery apps, you're only paying 30. And assume that there is a delivery driver who is available to deliver this for anywhere between $6 to $7 plus tips, which actually is practical today because any gig economy driver within an average 3 to 4 miles will deliver for $6 to $7 plus tips. Now, suddenly you have a cost equation where you have $30 of subtotal and then $6 to $7 plus tips that goes to the driver. This is what we are trying to kind of make it work at scale. So if you look at delivery apps today, there's a lot of like fees that is like unpacked, and I'll tell you why our approach to it is different. But I just want to level set on what is the economics of a third party order and what is the economics of a first party order. Okay. So first, $36 versus 30, and then a delivery fee plus service fee plus tips, probably another like $14, $15. And on the first party side, you just pay a delivery fee plus tips that directly goes to the driver. So you're already saving anywhere between $9 to $10 or even more as a consumer. Now, the issue is the first party is fragmented, right? Like I have to go to Burger Joint's website that is probably poorly designed. Maybe if I'm ordering on a national chain, they have a fantastic web app where all these things are there. What we are trying to do is we are trying to create a first party native marketplace where all of the cost that you see in the first party stays the same, but married with the selection of a third party. How are we able to do that, right? Today, one of the main reasons the expense of the third party network is high is because of supply acquisition cost, which is third party apps, we shall not name who they are, have done the hard work of going to a restaurant one by one, having an army of like salespeople, maintaining their menu and all those, and account managers. So there is a lot of fat that was set up for this venture backed companies over the last 13, 14 years. And kudos to them, they've done a good job. And I think when pandemic hit, all these kind of like scaled because they were at the right time, at the right place, right systems, right products, right team. And then it just ballooned to close to like a north of $150 billion of market cap today. What I believe is the cost that we are seeing in third party is the cost of dual stack. Let me unpack what I mean by that, right? today, every restaurant, whether it's the Chipotles of the world or my favorite Indian restaurant, has something called a point of sale, which is the operating system of a restaurant. It has the menu, it has whatever details that is needed to take the order, to send the order to the kitchen, to basically do whatever it takes for a first party order to go.
Sure.
The real issue is the third party ecosystems have created a parallel stack to that. Again, now maybe the tablet nightmare is all gone, but that's how it started. So there is a lot of fat involved. Bytes is actually creating a marketplace on top of the POS rails. That is our secret sauce. We are not going to restaurants one by one and selling bytes, because if we end up doing that, we will be creating another marketplace company, or to Chad's point, we will be added to the list of failure companies on trying to do this in the same way. Our playbook is actually not to go to restaurants one by one. Instead, we are actually creating a B2B2C playbook where we are going to the point of sale companies and saying, by the way, I'm sure they know this, but 99% of your off-premise orders are not going through your system. It's actually directly going to third-party marketplaces, and they don't make any money out of it. Nor do they know Chad eats burger 4 times in a month, because they have zero idea about it. What we are saying is we are taking a relook at this marketplace, but we are actually creating a first party on top of the point of sale. So when we are working with a point of sale company, not only we integrate, but we actually bring in a default distribution. What it means is, if we are integrating with a POS company 1, and if you are integrating with a POS company 2, we automatically by default bring all their restaurants into the Bytes ecosystem as an opt-in channel. That is the fundamental shift in Bytes ecosystem versus like a third-party ecosystem. And why would a POS company do this, right? They'll do this for 2 reasons. One, every order that is going to go through our ecosystem will go through the payment rails of the POS company. So any order that goes through the system, the point of sale companies make a revenue share. Because today, if you go and swipe your credit card or do Apple Pay on third-party apps, POS companies make zero money. But of course, it goes to the third-party apps. Whereas if you go and swipe your credit card in the store, of course, they make a money out of it because they have a credit card processing. We are taking the best of what is happening in the first party and inside the 4 walls, and taking the same incentive to create a marketplace. That is why we hopefully will not be one of the 100 companies that Chad is mentioning, trying to actually do the same playbook, because our goal is not to actually go to restaurants one by one. In fact, our GTM strategy is actually not to have a GTM.
Okay. So I love the distribution strategy and how you don't have to sign up restaurants one by one. My first question, just a real quick one, is what major POS partnerships are you already publicly talking about, if any?
Yeah, so we will be announcing our first cohort in Restaurant Leadership Conference. So we have signed a few NDAs. So hopefully you'll hear about it a little bit more. But the way we see it is, I'm sure you know this, right? Like the point of sale is also like a pretty fragmented space. There are the point of sale companies who focus on independence and SMB. Of course, they are the big names, probably not easier to kind of get into this ecosystem immediately. But we are actually starting with the enterprise POS companies, the ones that have strong brands. These brands are the ones that have the most leverage in terms of making the first party work. They are the ones who are losing that 25-30% on like a big margins, right? These are like the Dave's Hot Chickens of the world, the Jack in the Box, the Denny's, the Burger Kings. They are like, even a 1% saving for them is like a huge savings that they can put back into the customers and restaurants. So we are starting with the enterprise point of sale companies, because they also need to figure out how to kind of compete against this third party in a way that works for them. Because today, as you know, the only channel that is growing is the third party. The first party ecosystem is not as growing at the same pace as third party. So we are actually going and giving a leverage to these POS companies that they can then take to the brands. So that's why this relationship is like interesting, because today there is no choice available, right? And I was listening to your previous episode with Christopher Sebs, right, which is like the world doesn't need another POS. He rightfully put it, right. Honestly, POS companies are looking for like what more I can offer, like, because that piece of hardware with the credit card machine is not the best leverage for you to build as a company. And we are saying that, hey, let's create a marketplace business for you, but this marketplace business is not like opaque to you like what is happening today in the third party, but this is actually going through your rails.
Okay.
When you think about this, Bala, what was it that made you want to dip into this pool? You know, there's a lot out there. So you have to feel pretty strongly to say, not only am I going to build something, I'm going to raise on it. I'm going to put together a team. I'm going to go to MVP. I mean, you really feel committed to this. What is it that you have a fire? Where's it coming from?
Great question. So I think for me, of course, as a technology background, because I was part of Instacart, like I kind of understand the ecosystem of any supply and demand. Building a consumer app is different from building a marketplace. Like it's not a deterministic product to build. Like you need to understand what levers to pull first. Do you have to work on supply? Do you have to work on demand? It was a fantastic experience for me and my co-founder. Both were at Instacart from its early days till the IPO. So we were very lucky to have seen that journey. I think if you ask me where the fire comes from, it
Yeah.
just comes from being part of a community where I see the value is being sucked out of local communities. And if you look at my understanding is around 70% of American businesses are local businesses. And there is no local businesses that is important to the community than a restaurant because food is emotional. Everybody's best memories are around like a dinner table, whether it's at home or whether it's at a restaurant. And I feel especially post the pandemic, there is a lot of like grief on like, hey, I think this is just going only one way. Like we have lost to the technology, and I feel like as a technology optimist, I want to kind of like give that back to the community. And I feel like in this AI native era, there is a way to create a marketplace that works for the restaurants and not against the restaurants. So to me, I think for me, it's like how do you kind of create a technology company that puts community first and keeps the local dollars local. Whereas if you look at the third party marketplace, it's actually taking the local dollars away from the local.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I want to dive into the ultimately the element of this that matters the most, which is the consumer and their experience. And so now pretend I'm somebody who has a DoorDash habit. For the sake of this example, I'm not on a subscription plan, making it harder, right? But I've got the habit. That's how my brain's wired. What's going to happen? What are the forces acting on me that's going to shift me to becoming someone who principally orders through Bites?
So let me start with a disclaimer that we don't claim to overthrow their third party delivery apps overnight. I do not have a like magic formula that says, hey, here are your 30 million subscribers on the delivery platforms. And by the way, I have a magic way to kind of flip that tomorrow, right? I don't, anybody who says that is lying. What we are doing is we are trying to set up the next decade of online ordering so that when I come back to this podcast in 2036, we are at a place where we say, okay, restaurant economy is $2.5 trillion. Today it's 1.5 trillion. Maybe in 10 years it doubles. And then off that, maybe 50% of that is off premise, but 90% of that is actually first party. That's what we are working towards. I do not think there is any silver bullet that changes this equation of like third party suddenly becoming first party. Number one, I want to set that disclaimer first.
Very smart.
How we do that? So today we are at a very interesting point in consumer mentality. So if you look at 20 years back, right, like there was dine in and slowly phone ordering was coming in, reservations were coming in. And then if you look at 10 years back, websites were coming in. This was the Grubhub seamless time. And then after the iPhone moment and the App Store, apps started coming in. So every decade or so, approximately, there is a change in consumer behavior. And today we are at a very unique point where AI agents are actually becoming more like super apps. Everybody is now jamming on ChatGPT. Everybody is now jamming on Claude. It doesn't mean that they will stop ordering on other apps and start getting into these super apps. But we are at a very interesting point. So what Bytes is doing is if a restaurant or if a point of sale is actually part of the Bytes ecosystem, they become AI native by default. What it means by that, right? So let's say there is a burger joint in Bytes in San Jose that's part of the Bytes ecosystem. Either they have directly worked with us or through the point of sale. That doesn't matter. We have a menu and we have a restaurant in that ecosystem. When somebody goes to ChatGPT and says order burger in San Jose, because we are AI native, we are able to bring up that inline ordering. Because without that, what will happen is there'll be like 3 blue links, just like a typical Google search. If they have a website, it'll point that. And even there, if you look at it, the third party ecosystems are like trying to hijack that space also, which is like First and DoorDash and Uber Eats link are the ones that will show up. What we will do is because we are AI native, we will make make the restaurant's menu like AI visible, right? Just like the SEO, there's an AIEO technology that we have. Because LLMs understand the context of price, and because the menu is coming from the POS, the burger is still $15 or not $18. So LLMs are smart enough to kind of bubble up the first party ordering ecosystem. And that's how we feel the next 12 to 18 months of like ordering will slowly go. Again, that doesn't mean the flip will happen immediately, right? So that is one customer acquisition channel that we feel very strongly about because all the food query searches are going from Google to ChatGPT and Claude and all those. So converting that will be our first step. So that will help us get into the doors and help POS companies monetize that query. So that's like one arc of like growth. The other arc of growth is actually the Bytes app. And again, this is where we don't want to kind of go head to head with third party companies who are spending $500 million on App Store ads every year, right? But interestingly, unlike 10 years back, today we have the power of social media. So we have, like, once we have a good enough selection, today we have, let's say, 2,000 restaurants on the platform, right? Once we announce the POS partnerships, that will go from 2,000 to 100,000 in a day because I don't have to walk into these restaurants one by one by one. I have all these selections of the big brands vis-a-vis the point of sale partnerships. Now, when somebody downloads the app, like we have to figure out some TikTok strategy. We'll have to make Michael dance for something, and ultimately it's about getting some virality, right? And everybody honestly is looking for savings. Everybody is looking for what are the interesting ways. And I believe like strong restaurant media, strong restaurant associations, strong restaurant consortiums are actually going to help us like take this because restaurants benefit. We have onboarded, while our strategy is not to onboard restaurants one by one by one. I met like 13 to 14 restaurant people in Mertech Startup Alley, and we have onboarded all of them. I don't spend personally my time because I want to focus on the POS, but we have onboarded all of them. We don't get orders today, but they're like, hey, when you get orders, I know it'll be profitable from day one. So that's the second fold of the strategy because once we have a good selection in the Bytes marketplace, we have n number of ways to make the app download. But when they download, they should see at least 80% of the selection that they see today on a third party marketplace. Because if they download and they see only one restaurant, right, what's the point? So we do not want to do any investment on the customer app till we have a good selection. And the good selection comes from the point of sale partnerships and distribution.
So, question, and I know we have to land the plane in here in a minute. And please forgive my neurodivergent brain because it goes all over the place when we're talking about these things. I'm thinking about how delivery works. I'm thinking about third party. I'm thinking about first party. Now I'm thinking about robots. And I know this is a little bit of departure, but Chad and I just came back a couple of weeks ago. We were with a new emerging delivery organization called Coco Robotics, and they have autonomous robots to deliver. How do you see all that playing inside the loop of what you're working in?
Great question. So I think delivery, like just stitching it back to how we do fulfillment, right? Today we still use third party fleet to do the fulfillment, right? And as I said, delivery is already a commodity. For $6 to $7 plus tips, you can get the delivery, right? Robots can actually help reduce that. Again, the jury is out there still in terms of like safety and in terms of all the other things. But I do believe there is a future where robots will do the food delivery. The Bytes model is actually on the demand side, not on the fulfillment side. Like we believe that even if robots are not there, like when we get to some level of scale, we will have our own fleet of drivers because one of the interesting model that we have, unlike the third party one, is 100% of delivery fee and tips will go to the drivers. Today, I don't have any drivers. I still use third party fleet. So I give away that 100% to the third party. And we all know they don't give 100% of that to the drivers. Right. So to me, the model in which I'm operating is I do not want to be a commissions based marketplace either on the restaurant side nor on the driver side. Think of us as like analogy I give to other people is think of us as like a farmer's market where you go to farmer's market and you know every penny that you're paying is going to the farmer, right? And then ultimately there is a fee to be participative in the farmer's market, and our fee is $1 per order because one, I don't have any cost because I don't have to market and all those stuff. Second, I don't have the supply acquisition cost. The menu is all coming from the point of sale. So by creating a different incentives for the point of sale companies and extension restaurants, I'm creating a decentralized marketplace that is different from like a third party marketplace economics. So when robots come, we will use that as a fulfillment methodology. I don't think it changes anything in that. Ultimately, the value that we are trying to create is going to go back to the restaurants.
Got it. Chad?
Well, I know we're at time, but I just want to acknowledge your answers to all these questions were phenomenal, and I agree. It's going to take some time, but if you can harvest demand on the consumer side by the increasing evolution of AI and chat, your own app, etc., the economics will speak for themselves. And it's really going to be interesting to see how agents play a role in the restaurant selection process over the coming years.
Yeah,
How
I
much
think
of
AI
that do
is
people hand off Because if they do, this is going to go nuts for you guys.
I think we are not putting all our eggs in that basket. I would say I think it's helping us create the right attention with the point of sale companies with some of the partnerships. But I actually still think what we need in terms of the pivotal moment is the selection. The moment we are able to get a good enough selection of, let's say, 2 or 3 enterprise POS companies and maybe one strong SMB or independent POS company, we already have maybe like 250,000 to 300,000 restaurants in North America. So that is, again, that's not as good as the third party marketplaces who today have 400 to 450. That's my understanding of the total number of restaurants on the other 2 platforms. So once we have that, we can do some interesting social media experiments because everybody is looking for savings. Why would I pay $51 for a 2 burgers when I know there is an alternative available for $38? Like nobody would do that. Now the question is nobody knows that there is an alternative way. So we have to make sure that when we have a good selection, we leverage all of the ecosystem that exists in restaurants and consumers to make that happen. Like maybe we talk to a TikTok influencer and say, hey, help us do this and we will get 1 million downloads in the same day. I don't know if that's the right strategy, but there are ways to do that.
Right.
But I do not want to put any money into that till we have a good selection, because there's no point putting into that, because it's not about acquisition. It's about retention. How can we make sure that somebody places their second and the third order so that the restaurant benefits? That's where our mind is at.
Chad and I have some experience about looking at an app and waiting for the merchant community to be behind it when you open it and see if there's anybody participating yet.
Oh, yeah. To say the least.
Yes, we know a little bit about that. He knows more than I, but yeah, absolutely. Well, Bala, thank you so much for hopping on here. If I said, give me 3 key takeaways that if people didn't catch that during the course of what you just said, what are the 3 things you want them to remember about Bytes?
First, I think the restaurant industry has not yet lost to the third party. I think the game is still on. So I'm yet to concede. So that's number 1.
Okay.
Second is we believe that the consumers are looking for an alternative to save money outside the third party ecosystem. But the current first party fragmentation doesn't solve the problem. So we are here to take a fresh look at creating the best of first party and third party together. And number 3 is if you're a restaurant listening, and nudge your POS companies to talk to Bytes. And if you're a POS company, you can always email me, bala@bytes.com, and we would love to kind of bring you into the consortium to hopefully set up yourself and your restaurants up for success for the next decade of online ordering.
Fantastic. And then I like to ask at the end of all these to make sure that people loved hearing what you had to say, where can they find you next? Right. So you're on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure you're present there. And I believe I heard you say you're going to be at the Restaurant Leadership Conference in Phoenix, Arizona this coming April. Where else were you going to be this year that people might be able to run into you, talk to you, test your theories?
So definitely hit us on LinkedIn. You can always go to our website with bytes.com. You can download the Bytes app if you are in the Bay Area, but outside Bay Area, if you download, you might not have any restaurant selection. But if you're in the Bay Area, you might still have a decent selection of restaurants. Because up until 6 months back, we were still adding restaurants one by one by one. So maybe you'll find enough choice there. We will be at the Restaurant Leadership Conference, hopefully announcing a few partnerships. Few more conferences in the coming quarters, but we are yet to finalize on that.
It's fantastic. Chad, anything else before we hop off here?
Oh, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
I look forward to learning more and talking with you at RLC on the back of those announcements.
Yeah, this is exciting stuff. I'm always curious how we're going to fit another app into our phone. But I think the TikTokers influencer might be a new way to convince people to do that. And it sounds like you might be able to knock some things off your phone at the same time when you're doing that as well. So I wish you the best of success, Bala. I think, I love anybody that's got the grit to bring something to the world.
Thanks, Michael and Chad. I really appreciate all the great questions. Again, it's still day 1 for us. So in fact, it's day 0 for us. So we are here to solve a massive, massive problem. I tell my team that we do not have a TAM problem. Unlike many companies, we have an execution problem that we feel along with the POS companies, we can actually take it to the industry to set up the industry for the next decade of success. So looking forward to more chats like this. And as I said, looking forward to 2035 podcast where we talk about Chad and Michael being the first ones to talk about Bytes in the industry.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bala. You have a wonderful day. And everybody, this has been Bala with Bytes. If you have any questions, you know where to find him. If not, like we always say, track us down. We'll track them down for you. And in closing, don't forget kindness, random acts of kindness, sprinkle that stuff everywhere. You never know whose day you're going to make better. Bala made our day better by sharing some stuff with us about his company. I'm sure we helped out a little bit on making his day better by giving a voice to use and a platform to use his voice on. So You never know whose day you're going to change just with a small act of kindness. Keep that up. Have a wonderful day. And thank you guys for being part of our community.
Thanks, Chad, Michael.